because otherwise I'm going to be just making shit up.
That's new for you?
Yeah, but
This way he sounds like a producer. You're listening to Dots, Lines, and Destinations, a travel podcast with hosts Stephen Seagraves, Fosma Moon, and Seth Miller. Hello and welcome to episode 304 of Dots, Lines, and Destinations. I am Stephen Seagraves, joined by Seth Miller and Fosma Moon. Gentlemen, how are you?
Happy March.
Happy March. I mean,
was it March 6.0, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Or, today is, by my count, March 189th.
Yeah, so we're there.
Isn't it crazy to think about the number of days? Like, it's just it's wild.
No, I added too many. I included February in that. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Because that's how many days it's been since I've been on a plane, and my last flight was January 31st.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. I took I took a train and a bus down to New York for my trip in mid-February and haven't been since. Linnea was laughing at me today. She's like, wait a minute, I've been on a plane more recently than you have? Which is not common, as you might imagine.
Yeah. And you guys are having a scorcher up in the Northeast. It's actually really nice here today in the Pacific Northwest.
So. Great couple days earlier, or late last week. I don't know what the rest of this week's going to hold. I think it's supposed to be hot again.
Yeah. Well, let's just jump right into this. So there's a USA Today story. The Chicago health officials are checking social media posts to enforce the traveler quarantine. What is the deal here?
So, like New York and some other places, people arriving in Chicago from various out-of-state areas are supposed to self-quarantine.
Yep.
And when they aren't, they get in trouble. There's a fine or whatever. It turns out that, and depending on who you believe and how it's being structured, the city says it's not going out of its way to specifically scour social media to find things, but if they get reports that people are not quarantining, they'll go check social media accounts, and if they can find, if you take a selfie in front of the bean, that's the evidence that's the only evidence they need, basically.
Wow. I mean, good for them. I mean, I think it's big.
What if you Photoshop it?
I mean, yes. So go ahead and claim that it was a fake picture, but
it's a deep fake.
Well, I mean, you could really start screwing with them, right? If someone really wanted to prove how short-sighted that approach could be, people could just start posting a bunch of fakes and tying up the system.
Yeah, they're not. They're only doing it as a secondary sort of thing, right? They're not going out of their way, but also, no one has the energy to create the fakes. Why are you going to create a fake to get yourself caught to appeal the fine to prove that it wasn't real? How does that work for you? How is that a good plan?
Well, I would argue that there's a lot of people who have a lot of spare time these days.
Yeah, but I still come back to, why would I purposefully get myself fined or sent to jail or whatever for the sake of having a legal fight that there's still a chance I might not win?
Well, if it's a fake thing, then you're not actually guilty, so you just have to prove your innocence. But then you're tying up resources. Look, people do these kinds of things to break the system all the time. I would not really surprise. I mean, we know some people who do stuff like this just to screw with people and break the system.
Yeah, I feel like the idiots we know rarely do it to the extent that they purposely take a legal hit first so much rather than, just screwing around. But there are a lot of idiots out there. That's fair.
I mean, do you think we're going to see this in other places? I mean, has New York said anything like this?
I haven't heard it. I wouldn't be surprised.
New York keeps saying that they're going to start checking at the tunnels and bridges. They announced it last week. Mm-hmm. I drove in last week, or drove through the city last week, and there's no one checking anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the New York one was also somewhat of a ad hoc or spot check kind of thing. There was a story out where New York County sheriffs were pulling people over with out of state plates and talking to them, not enforcing anything, but reminding them of the rules. Yeah.
Which, I mean, I get it, all right? If you're really trying to control some of the stuff, especially from people who are from hot spots, right? Like that makes sense. I mean, here, I was out east of Portland this morning, and one of the things that they've closed is all the hikes along the Columbia River Gorge. So you actually can't access the highway that goes to all of them. And we were just talking, my wife and I were just talking about how they're still closed. Like, you would think that's something that's socially distanced, but her point was, and she brought up a good one, people will flock there if they're open. Like, it's such a common or popular place that if people will come from out of state to go to these places. And so, I mean, it's a good thing to talk about, like with the Bean or the Magnificent Mile in Chicago.
Does it become an attractive nuisance instead of just an attraction?
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say the other thing, I did see a story about New York where apparently there's concern of putting civilians, like just, health department officials or whatever, sort of at Penn Station to try to collect data, or at the airports to try to collect data from people. They don't have the authority to detain, so it's kind of it becomes very voluntary anyways, and they sort of decided it's not worth the fights, apparently.
So it'd be like the TSA checkers, like the people who check your ID at the TSA line to see if or your boarding pass to see if you have pre-check or none.
Oh, yeah, like the maroon coats, not the active.
Yeah, like the maroon coats. Like, oh no, sir, you have to go to a different line.
Yeah, I had one of them chase me all the way up to the TSA guy once when I ignored him. Like, through back and forth through like 4 rounds of the stanchions. It was pretty awesome. He was still yelling at me, like, as the TSA guy was like, no, his ID is fine. I'm letting him in. But that was a long time ago. Anyway, yeah. We had one of our friends of the show, Justin, out in California, was talking with him the other day about going to the beach. He was going to the beach, and he said they had to drive further and further out than they thought to find a beach that was quiet, because half the beaches in Southern California are closed, given that like all the different little townships have different rules. Yeah. And so some of them get way more crowded.
Yeah, makes sense. On the same kind of note, but in a different vein, the State Department's no longer advising against global travel, but who's actually going to take us in as Americans?
There's like 6 countries.
Yeah. I mean, what is it now? The UK?
Well, with or without a quarantine.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So with quarantine, there's a few, but you also have to get to the, like, not every country will let non-citizens in. Some will with a quarantine, some will without a quarantine. But the thing about this one that I found interesting is the CDC officially backed down on a global do not travel recommendation, and so the State Department followed. But it wasn't you should go travel now. It was instead of having a single global list, we are going to now go back to individual country lists. Mm-hmm. And so each individual country has a recommendation based on, among other things, the health environment there, and whether it's, if it's high rates, then the recommendation is still don't go. So, and I felt like this was a little bit of a tease, and certainly the way all the headlines shared it, I shared it, and how I shared it in our show notes. You're welcome for that. Yeah.
I mean, okay, they have a single list now. Is it like countries that are hotspots? Is that the idea? And so Brazil would be on that list. Mexico.
So. Yeah. Brazil, they're not even allowing pillows of any kind on flights.
But I mean, but Brazil is exploding. It's kind of like the US a little bit. Like it's exploded there to a point of they're not sure how they're going to contain it. And I think Mexico is the same way, right?
Mexico's bad. I'm not sure what the situation is in terms of what they're allowing tourists in.
Yeah, because we have the Interjet. Is it Interjet? No,
yeah,
it's the other one. Yeah, Interjet. We have the Interjet flight from here to Guadalajara, and it flies. It's flying every night. So I mean, clearly the border is open.
Yeah, U.S. citizens returning from Brazil do have an additional requirement, similar to returning from Europe, to have the sort of separate airports that they have to come through. But as you noted, Portland's not one of those airports, and Mexico's not included in that.
Yeah, and something interesting that Foz told me was for Delta, they're killing London Heathrow out of Portland. It goes away. Darn.
At least for the 2021 summer season.
Yep.
Unless it comes back, But yeah.
So, Seth, you kind of had like a kind of a breaking topic. United is giving global service members domestic lounge access.
When flying. Necessarily breaking. They emailed it to a bunch of people, but I got it as a press release. Yeah, domestic lounge access is a new benefit. I sort of get it in the context of global services was targeting people who traveled internationally and usually in premium cabin. So generally speaking, you didn't have to give them lounge access. There was the Polaris lounge, option, which they usually get if they're traveling in business class anyways. But just being Starline's Gold, you get lounge access and United Club access on your international itinerary. So that's cool. But you don't get anything on domestic travel. And presumably some of them either bought memberships or had the club co-brand credit card, but there was a sort of discrepancy or lacking of benefit there. And the gist of it is United said, well, crap, people aren't going to be flying internationally as much next year, or this year, where they extended GS a full year. So anybody who was GS in 2020 gets to keep it for 2021. And you get now a lounge membership for the year. So, I guess the presumption is that if they're traveling, there'll be more travel domestically, and on the off chance that we can let them, have a more comfortable experience, we will.
So is the spend criteria for GS this year like $1,000?
The official line was, it would not be fair to judge you for the 2021 invite based on this year's this year's numbers, so we're just extending it.
But are they, I guess the question that I'm asking is, are they saying we're not picking anyone new this year?
I am sure that if they wanted to, they can. Right? That's the joy of having a completely black box nebulous program that has no rules around it.
So the way I read this, though, the membership that they're giving, or the access that they're giving, is only good for the person traveling, right?
Correct.
For the global service member.
So you don't get a lounge membership, which typically comes with guests. You get lounge access.
Yeah, and if they're a million miler, it typically means their spouse or significant other has million miler as well, or has GS as well, so they can access it. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah. No kids or anything like that in the lounge. I mean, it's not like the lounges are crowded, but
not like the lounges are open.
Yeah. Oh, that's the other thing. So here, we've given you lounge access. There's only 3 lounges open in the entire country. Enjoy.
Well, so I actually asked about this. The thing that caught my attention is the benefit takes effect in January
of 2021.
Yeah, 4 months from now, 5 months from now, whatever.
Yeah.
So if you're traveling later this year, you still don't get access.
Yeah.
I was like, but why? And the response was twofold. One, we want to time it with all the other changes that are happening in terms of membership extension and stuff, which vaguely makes sense, but only if you sort of squint and, whatever. And then the other half of it was, also there's just not that many lounges open right now. They have like 1 in each of their hubs, and that's it. And until they get more open, and it's interesting how few United has relative to Delta and American, right, where American is adding... It's we're bringing back its free and paid food options, while United doesn't even barely has any lounges open.
Has United opened any of the Polaris lounges anywhere?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, I mean, because
there's no Polaris passengers.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because like Newark has kind of upped service, right? Like they've got Amsterdam, London, Frankfurt. I think Munich restarted. So they're having more flights. Yeah,
sorry, that Statue of Liberty photo.
It's painful. Anyway, we'll put a link to that in the show notes because it's interesting.
Understatement.
Yes. So I just was wondering, because Polaris lounges to me seems like something, that would, if there's customers flying, they would want to have that lounge, at least the Newark lounge, open for Europe.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still like a third to a quarter of the total number of transatlantic flights, and the load factors are way low. So like, how many people is it really, and is it worth the cost to try to staff that up? And I can't believe it would be.
Are you going to really open it for like 2 hours?
Yeah,
right. Because all those flights pretty much leave. Yeah, they all pretty much leave at the same time. So it's not like you can open a full shift. Yeah,
well, that does, only having to open it for a couple hours with a limited food service does make it a little easier to justify. But still, I can't imagine it's worthwhile.
But then it takes away from this level of service, right? That's the trade-off.
Sure, I don't believe that anyone rationally is going out and buying transatlantic business class flights and expecting to have the full service experience.
No.
But what about irrationally?
That's
I have no comments that are permitted under the current.
But I mean, Stephen, look at the bright side. I'm sure at this point you can sit anywhere in the food courts and no one will yell at you.
That's true. But I wonder, like, as the Polaris Lounge, as travel picks back up, right? I think I've complained about it on here. The Polaris Lounge did seem overcrowded at times, especially at Newark and at SFO during the Asian flight bank. But I think Chicago isn't that bad. I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, Foz?
Chicago, they expanded, right? So Chicago was bad during the early European bank. So like the 3 to 6 p.m., it was always busy. There was rarely ever seats. But if you were on one of the later flights, you were fine. Newark as a whole isn't so crowded. The problem is the sit-down dining area. And the same thing with SFO.
Yeah. Well, in SFO, you have that downstairs area where I think a lot of people don't even, like, all I want is like a drink and to take a shower. So like for me, the downstairs area is perfect because it's quiet.
Right.
Yeah. What else we got? Oh, Qatar Airlines is stumping for cash. What does this have to do with
Stuffing cash to Delta?
Yeah, like they're giving cash to Delta for LATAM.
No, they're giving cash to LATAM.
Oh, this gets complicated. Explain it.
Okay, so LATAM bankruptcy, Chapter 11, filed earlier this year. Working through bankruptcy involves something called debtor in possession financing, where basically new money has to come in. Okay. Right now, the LATAM proposal has 3 tranches of money. One is a $1.3 billion funding from Oak Tree Capital. Tranche 2 or Tranche B is $750 million from the government that may not and probably won't appear.
Okay.
Vaguely promised, but who knows if they actually have the money to do it. Tranche 3 is a $900 million additional funds, and this is where it gets interesting. The Cueto, C-U-E-T-O family, I think I'm saying that right, I'm spelling it right, is like a 25% shareholder of LATAM. There's another family that owns another 5%. They're stumping $300 million worth, right? They're ready to go with that. Qatar has signed on to put the other $600 million in for a $900 million total investment round. But Qatar only has a 10% stake and is putting up a lot of money. And so not only is Qatar Airways putting up way more money than you'd think it should, just relative to its initial investment or its previous investment stake, but it's doing it with these 2 different companies, QA Investments Limited and QA Investments 2 Limited, based in the Jersey Islands, which, good place for money laundering, I guess. Or, limited oversight investment vehicles. But so all of that is circumstantial evidence to the idea that, depending on how it looks or how it plays out, theoretically, one of these 2 QA investments companies or stakes can be assigned to a different party at a later point in time. And the rules for assigning it to a different party are essentially any other company that at the time of the deal taking effect owns 10% of LATAM is eligible to have one of these investment vehicles assigned to it. Guess how many other 10% owners there are?
Delta only.
Only Delta, and it owns 20%. And so basically, Delta can't put the money up today because of CARES Act rules. Yep. Right? They aren't allowed to conduct foreign investments in other airlines and things like that. There's a bunch of different conditions, but that's one of them, effectively. It also prevents them from investing in Virgin Atlantic. But if Delta still wants to maintain its sort of ownership stake somewhere down the line, it needs to have a position in this tranche of funding, because that's the other thing about this funding is at some point it converts from debt to equity, and the companies that are holding it get their shares, not all the shares back, but they get shares back and then become, new owners of LATAM once again.
So is this just kind of a backwards way of Qatar lending Delta money temporarily to control?
Yes, and what's interesting about it is I don't believe that there can be a true formal agreement that this is going to actually happen.
It's right? Just it's this 10% rule thing. It's like,
I think the 10% part clause is certainly limits who could take advantage of it, and then it's sort of a wink and a nod of, hey, Qatar Airways, why don't you see if this works? And, maybe somewhere down the line you might decide to assign it to someone else in exchange for certain considerations that will be determined later that we can't really put into contracts.
Given their history, what's the likelihood that Qatar says sure, and then down the road says, no?
There's potentially a risk of that. It's a weird one to me.
Yeah, because Delta has a sordid history with the Middle East 3, right?
Well, particularly Qatar, they've been downright vicious with.
Yeah. It's surprising to me that Qatar's like, we'll put the money out there. Unless there's some, I don't know, unspoken or spoken, not publicly promise of further down the line.
Well, also, I agree that it has been a vicious relationship is actually the term I used in the story. I'm in the middle of writing, that's why I was late, sorry. But, that is definitely part of the situation. But also remember that, after the Middle East 3 sort of agreed to stop expanding into the U.S., everybody started playing nice again. Mm-hmm. So, it's sort of was it just business kind of situation. Now, American is obviously playing nicer than the others because of the One World relationship with Qatar Airways. But, I think there may have been a bit of a détente, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I just find it fascinating because all this stuff is taking place, right? We kind of talked about it on previous shows. Where do we think aviation survives as it is? And it doesn't seem like it does. But and I've asked you, Seth, how many airlines fold in all this? Yeah. And we've said, we don't think the U.S. airlines will fold, but foreign airlines,
not the big 3 at least.
Well, and that's the thing is how I don't know, how is that even possible?
Not this year. They managed to borrow a lot of money. The real question is how quickly do things recover? How quickly can they trim cash burn? And how quickly can they start to cover the debt that they're accumulating? The interest payments are going to be a bitch.
Yeah. Yeah, and then for foreign carriers that aren't necessarily getting bailed out, I'd say I use that loosely, but even any kind of investment. So Virgin Atlantic comes to mind. Mm-hmm. How long will they last? Even into this year.
Well, Virgin Atlantic, if things go as expected, in a couple weeks, gets its 1.2 billion pounds of fresh cash, so they'll be okay for a while.
Yeah.
That's why the quote-unquote bankruptcy story that went around last week was such a joke.
Yeah.
Oh my god, they filed for bankruptcy. No, but technically they did. There's chapter, 13, 15, 27?
15.
Filing in the U.S. bankruptcy courts, but it wasn't liquidation. It wasn't even, it was just restructuring as part of the deal.
Yep, and that's from a foreign investment or foreign power. Yeah.
It's basically Chapter 11's subordinate to a foreign filing. It says that Virgin's going to follow whatever rules come elsewhere.
Yeah.
Or the U.S. will.
Well, and kind of along those same lines, so we're seeing kind of money grabs, right, or attempted money grabs by the airlines. And I sent you the link, Seth, for Alaska is having this BOGO sale. It's a buy one, get one free sale minus the tax. You have to pay the taxes and fees for basically you're buying a whole row on an airplane. And it's cheap. Like for transcons, I think I saw round trips in the $300 range for a whole row. But this, you said it's a grab of money, or they're trying to at least.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have not been shy about my position that I don't think non-essential leisure travel right now is a good idea.
Yeah.
And I understand that the airlines need money to survive, but also, they need us to all be alive next year. So, and they need the pandemic to come under control so that we actually can reopen, businesses and things in a manner that doesn't involve tens of thousands of people getting sick and thousands of people dying a day.
Yeah, yeah. And so Alaska's offering this. I mean, it's interesting because it's the opposite of kind of what we're saying, right? Leisure travel. It's really targeted at people leisure traveling.
Yeah. And it's because of the way they're phrasing the buy a row thing. They're only promising an empty middle seat through October, if I remember correctly. And so what they're really targeting is the sort of September, October, very steep leisure downturn that usually is a massive trough for demand in the industry. And we thought, Q1 was bad, Q2 was bad. Q3 is going to be pretty bad too now.
Yeah.
It was all Q3 is always lower than Q2, and if that's the demand keeps dropping, that's going to be really bad news for the airlines.
Yeah, yeah. And then Qantas is parking more planes. Not a good sign. And this time it's the 787s. They're doing it in Victorville.
Most of them will be moving to Victorville. A few are staying in Australia for one-offs that they might need them for, but other than that, it looks like they're parking them for the foreseeable future. What's funny is I have a Brisbane-Chicago ticket for January that they still haven't canceled.
I mean, they've announced it's not going to operate, though.
I understand that, but they haven't actually processed the cancellations.
Okay, they'll get to it eventually.
Is that the one I was booked on?
I think we were doing it together, yeah.
Well, mine canceled.
Mine hasn't.
I actually got a phone call from Alaska, and they were like, your flight canceled. Do you want your miles back?
I just literally pulled it up as we were starting to record. Mine is still active.
That's funny.
On the Qantas site.
Did you book it from Alaska also?
Yes, but it's active on both the Qantas and the Alaska site.
That's wild. Yeah, because mine canceled. They sent me a notification, and then I had someone call me, and they were like, do you just want to get rid of this ticket? I was like, yeah, sure.
I want to fly it.
No, I'm going to demand that you open award space on a partner the minute that the flights get reinstated, knowing full well that that's impossible.
Yes.
No, I will not hang up the phone. I insist that you honor this request. Sir, the Wendy's. It's interesting about it is they're bringing them to Victorville, following all the 380s that went to Victorville, and I don't know, it makes sense to store them in the desert. It's kind of ironic that Alice Springs filled up with Singapore and other Asian carriers before Qantas could get space there, so they had to bring them all the way to the U.S.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask, because I was going to say, I'm sure there's desert in Australia. Why aren't they parking them there? But you just answered that for me.
Yeah, Alice Springs, Singapore put a bunch of planes there earlier. I think Cathay's got a few there also. So, and that's the main airport that would be used for that sort of thing.
Okay. And I think with Victorville, what interests me with Qantas is their long haul fleet really is at this point A330s and 787s, right? That's all they have. There's no 747s
also, yeah,
and because the 380s are gone. So for them to get up to speed again, I mean, how many are they keeping? 3 or 4 on hand, or is it more than that?
330s.
What's that? I know they have the 330s, but that's it.
Yeah, I heard somewhere in around 4 would stay in Australia.
They only have 9, right? Yeah, it's not like they have a ton of them.
Yeah. Wow.
But no, I mean, listen, they're not flying long haul though. It's sort of like New Zealand. It's like everybody else. Who is it? Virgin Australia. And did we talk about Virgin Australia restructuring last week?
We've talked about it a few times, I think, but I don't know.
Well, they announced their plans.
So what are they going to do?
737s only.
So domestic flying, really.
Domestic flying. Getting rid of Tiger Air Australia. Sorry, I completely blanked that we hadn't talked about this. I did it on another show I do. Yeah, getting rid of Tiger Air Australia, but they're keeping the operating certificate, and then 737's only getting rid of the 330s and 777s, which is only like a dozen planes, but still, yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, we talked about the different agreements for having Charleston 787s delivered for some of the airlines and the paint shop requirements. I was actually driving by the paint hangars here at PDX. Scoot, there's one Scoot plane parked there. It doesn't look like it's going to be moving anytime soon. There was a Qatar plane, and who else? There was another passenger 787, and it looked like they were just being parked there. So very interesting that they're not even going to, I guess, not take delivery, or they'll hold them there for a little while longer. Yeah, anyway.
I wonder how long before they move them to the desert, though.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess it's an easy flight from here down to Victorville.
Sorry, no, I thought I had an idea, but I don't.
No, it's okay. So last topic is kind of a big one. Aeroplan is being relaunched, and Seth, you have the details.
I do, and I'll get most of them right, hopefully. So, Aeroplan, they're announcing this today on the 11th, which, well, when this publishes, it'll be on the 11th, and then it'll be published for actual listeners on the 13th, and whatever. It gets announced on the 11th, so if you're a Patreon subscriber, you'll hear about this then. If not, you'll hear it later. And it doesn't take effect until next year, but it's launching, and they're starting, or later this year. I don't even actually remember the exact date that they've announced that it's going to take effect. But the new program, I have to admit that I'm biased because we know the people who wrote it.
Yeah.
Right, the old friends of ours. In the briefing where they introduced it to me and many other journalists, they started by explaining it's a program written by points junkies. And people they were at one point slipped in. It's like, oh yeah, we made up this part of the program on that mileage run we took from Calgary to London, right? Like it's kind of an amazing situation in that context, and I think it's pretty good. Listen, not everybody's going to be happy, but I think that it balances a lot of things, like, for example, getting rid of fuel surcharges.
Interesting.
There are no more fuel surcharges, so all of a sudden, you can now, you always had access to the whole Star Alliance world, but on many of the carriers, you had to pay the fuel surcharge. Now you don't. So that opens up, many more flights that people might have been averse to booking in the past. The points required for long-haul stuff goes up a little bit. 10 to 20% probably across the board, and it varies, but going from 60,000 to 75,000 points one way on a transatlantic business class ticket, while also dropping $750 in fuel surcharges, doesn't seem like a bad trade-off to me.
Yeah.
Partner bookings have I think $39, if I remember correctly, ticketing fee.
Okay.
Less good if you're talking about like a short haul or North America trip that you have some United flights on. Again, because the fuel surcharges are waived, not such a big deal for the international stuff. Trying to think what else some of the sort of highlights are that are worth talking about. The no fuel surcharges thing was really surprising to me, and made it nice.
Are they doing any kind of round the world routings or anything like that? Or they have any kind of tickets like that?
So there's not round the world, but there are one free stopover on each award. What they call a bound, or a one-way to each one-way.
Okay.
So you get a free stopover along the way now. Or is it free or is it 5,000 points? I gotta check my notes here. But you can do stopovers, which is nice. Let me see if I have it.
It's almost like they've taken parts of the United.
One stop. Yeah, well, given that at least two of the executives came from there, yes. Stopovers are 5,000 points. And no stopovers within North America, which is a downgrade from today. But the international stopovers are good. There's also the routing rules are akin to the old United routing rules, which is if you can make the computer put it to, if you can find all the inventory and we can type it into the computer, it'll spit it out. But the award chart is a combination of distance and zone based. I really think it's one of the comments they made, and I think they really nailed it, is sort of the idea of trying to both continue to deliver value to the program and to the company, but also taking some of the money that these programs are ridiculously profitable, taking some of the profit money that comes into the programs and actually reinvesting it in things like making these awards more available and such.
Mm-hmm. And did they talk at all about availability? I mean, Air Canada, is there a premium if you want to a fly now option on Air Canada Metal? Or?
Air Canada Metal does have so no blockouts, all seats available kind of situation. Okay. It's not quite as bad as the Aeroplan revenue ticket pricing. But yes, if you want, last seat available, it's going to cost you more. If I'm looking at this, the range they give, that 75,000 or 80,000 point award that I found earlier on partners will range from 85,000 to 200,000 on Air Canada. Gotcha. Again, no fuel surcharges anymore, so win some, lose some. It's it's not perfect by any stretch. There's still that weird scenario where partner space is more, is going to be a better value in many cases, but it also doesn't completely suck.
Did they talk about it at all about opening up more Air Canada inventory? Because they tend to be very stingy.
Didn't talk about it, wasn't discussed on the briefing that I was a part of. I think part of that comes down, or at least not that I remember, maybe they did. But the gist of it, I think, is that they're hoping because it's not necessarily just the XIO, those three buckets or whatever that they are now. I'm sure it's X and I for business, or for economy and business. I know what premium economy is. I'm not sure where that's really going to come into play, but versus just, working against revenue buckets that happen to price in a certain way. Mm-hmm. There is actually one other thing they said, and again, going back to their experiences as consumers rather than just people running the program, was, if you can find the entire trip in long-haul premium cabin, but, maybe the Portland to LAX flight is a single class, it's a single class of service airplane and doesn't have first class, or it doesn't have availability, or whatever it is, they didn't want that to blow up the pricing. Mm. So they're making it so they put some conditions around that where you can't. It's not perfect, but it doesn't blow up the pricing completely when it refactors, things like that. Yeah. They also managed to improve the mixed cabin award indicator. So if you have an award that has mixed cabin availability, they color code and show a sort of sliding bar that gives you the percentage that's in the good cabin versus the lower cabin. Okay. So you can at a glance in the search results see, okay, only the short hauls in business, or maybe the bigger segments are. Right, remember, United tried to do that sort of by not showing them if the short haul was the only cabin, it was the only one in the bigger cabin, and then just gave up on that.
Yeah. I mean, to me, this comes across as a better United program, right? Where we don't have we have the last minute availability cost, but we've taken away the restrictions on distance and, number of segments and routing, right? Because United, you used to be able to route via, Europe to go to Asia. And you can today still, but it has to be something that the engine kicks back, not something you type in. So you can't manually force it.
Yeah, the routing rules and United used to be great like that. It seems like Air Canada is trying to go back to that. I will say one minor frustration to me is that premium economy awards are still Air Canada only. The Alliance, they still haven't figured that out. Mm.
Yeah, I mean, that's something. I mean, to me, Air Canada actually struggles with it as well because they can't sell. When on my Q400 flights up to Vancouver, they can't sell me the premium economy on the same ticket. It has to be a separate ticket.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It actually was interesting that they chose not to put United on the comparison page, but they did a little comparison against Advantage, Sky Miles, Executive Club, and Life Miles of, what's this, Nashville to Rome business class one way kind of thing. And, not surprisingly, they win in the comparison, and actually Executive Club comes in second in terms of the things that they're sharing, including, but, and that's even with the ridiculous copay on Executive Club. So, family sharing comes along. You can have family pooling. Unlike JetBlue, where everything goes into one place and then you just draw out of the common area, if each of us has, let's say I have 30,000 points, Steven, you have 20,000, and Foz has 10, and we go in together and we have a 60,000 point account, and we redeem a 20,000 point award, it'll take... I did that 30,000 point award, so I can do the math. It'll take 15 from me, 10 from you, and 5 from Foz. So sort of half of it. It does it in proportion.
So it's the way BA does it.
Yeah, it's proportional like that. But you don't have to name. You can book awards for people that aren't your named family members. So it's a little better than BA's version.
So how are they going to? Well, you can do that with BA2, but you have to register them first. But I guess the question is, how are they going to combat fraud, right? That's the general reason.
Yeah, that question was asked. They didn't have a good answer.
Okay.
They had to know that was coming.
Oh, yeah. No, yes. The look on Mark and Scott's face when that question came up was like, oh, yeah, no, we are hoping to, we're going to see how it goes. Things may change, but no same family, no same address, no this, no that. It's up to some number of people, 8 maybe, 6 or 8 people. Where do I have that in my notes here too, somewhere. But family sharing, update family members. That's the other thing is there's preferred pricing on Air Canada Metal for co-brand cardholders and elite members.
Okay.
So, right, basically because it's sort of cents per point situation. It's ish. It's more revenue based. There's going to be a discount effectively if you have elite status or the credit card. If you're in a family plan, if anybody in the family has either of those things, everybody gets that benefit.
Oh, that's nice.
Do we have an affiliate link we can share for the credit card?
They have not relaunched the credit cards as part of this yet, but they have. That's actually one of the reasons they're putting this news out now, as early as they are, is because the credit cards are all changing, and the banks have to notify their customers, and so in order to do that, the program has to be public.
Gotcha.
So, we can laugh and bitch all we want about credit cards, but in this case, they mean that we get to know the details on the program earlier.
So how does this work? So Aeroplan, again, is just the rewards program. It's not the elite status program for Air Canada, correct?
It will be.
It will be.
Yeah,
so,
elite status rolls in too.
And so now, how does that work with earnings? So
at some point in 2021, there's a transition to fare-based earning, which is going to leave plenty of people upset. Let me see if I have my...
Could that shift given the current climate?
So there's good and bad. One of the... Here we go, I've got some earning rate stuff here. One of the good news bits is that basic economy actually will start to earn now where it doesn't today.
Okay.
But yeah, coming in 2021, it looks like basically... This is actually also interesting. Premium fares don't get an extra multiplier. They just are more expensive, so you earn more points, in theory. You basically earn 3 points per dollar across the board, and then, much like all the other programs, you get an extra point per dollar going up for the 25, 35K, 50K, 75K, and Super Elite 100K. So it tops out at 7 points per dollar earned. So earning is, and it's per Canadian dollar, which is either good or bad, depending on where you are.
Or loony.
Yes. So what I would say is the earning isn't spectacular, even against, could we say that it's, 5x, it's 5 points per dollar for the US 3 carriers, but it's Canadian dollars versus US dollars, so I have to do some math. I don't think it's quite that devalued yet, currency-wise, but I don't know that I'd want to necessarily have earned my earning by flying there, but... Say you got a lot of American Express points, and if they're still a transfer partner, like that starts to look better now to me.
Yeah, and who else is transfer partners? Is it just Amex, or is Chase involved with Air Canada at all?
I didn't think Chase had a direct transfer.
Gotcha. Okay,
but who knows what that'll change? I suspect they'll also be launching a U.S. card as well.
Yeah,
I think so.
Keep your eyes peeled. Was the only information we got on that.
Interesting.
So,
I'm intrigued.
They used to have one.
Yeah,
but it was very barely used and very barely marketed, and so I know that was a gap. So I suspect that will get relaunched. With who knows?
Yeah. What else you got, Seth? Anything else about that?
There's a ton more that eventually will come up, but it's really cool. I think it's a relatively compelling program again for. Transfer-ins. There's some other things they're doing. They call it everyday status. If you earn 100,000 points from anything other than credit card bonuses, or transfers in from other things, so basically credit card spend but not sign-on bonuses, or online shopping or other types of things, a total of 100,000 points in a year gets you bottom tier status.
Interesting.
So it doesn't get you any credit towards higher tiers, because they said that was just too complicated to prorate and figure out. But yeah,
I mean, this is the first shift in a program that I think is actually decent in the last few years. Everything else has turned to make things much worse. I think this is the first one that came out positive.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. Right, I know that. I will learn, at some point as this news all comes out from people that are diehard Air Canada aficionados, the bad news too. And there'll be something that people don't like, but whatever. For me right now, it takes what was an irrelevant program and makes it at least worth paying attention to.
Right.
Yeah. But counterpoint to that is, what really matters is the Canadians, not me.
Yeah, and how it's received. And I think the earnings of the earnings changing to being revenue based is definitely going to irritate people, right? So
yeah, counterpoint to that is, though, they are opening up a lot of the lower fare buckets that were already zero earn.
yeah, that's true.
Or
Very
25,
true.
right? Remember that they were one of those programs that was already very limited in earning on lower fares. So, I mean, we'd have to go back and check. There may be, you may start to see on some of the shorter haul flights that it's actually an improvement.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? The Northeast region sort of either transborder or not, but some of those short haul flights may actually end up being better rates now.
Yeah, yeah. Makes sense.
Oh, status pass for a day. That's another cool thing. So, Aeroplan or Altitude had their way they do their elite benefits is you sort of can pick and choose, one from column A, one from column B kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they're adding to the program is status for a day with what they're calling status pass. And basically, if you have 50K status or higher, you can select this. And when you give it to someone, they get the equivalent of 50K status for the trip that they're on. And so priority check-in, 3 bags, right? Check bags. You get the Star Gold bag allowance, priority security, Maple Leaf Lounge, priority boarding. And you can sort of just give that to someone if you take it as one of your options.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's going to launch next March-ish. So we'll see. And everybody gets one this year as a freebie because they want people to know.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool.
To learn about it. Yeah. So it's a neat one. Like I said, there's a lot of little things that are in this, and I barely, I got drowned in the details trying to pay attention for the 3 hours that the webinar was. So not great. But there'll be more that comes along. It's just really, I think it's, like Foz says, it actually feels not so bad. Like, it almost feels good. And it has me worried, but we'll see what actually comes of it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how people play with it and maximize the returns and rewards to their benefit and see what little nuggets people find. I'm sure people will find nuggets. So,
yeah.
Yep.
In both directions, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's a show, guys. To our listeners, you can find us on Twitter @DotsLines, moredotsmorelines.com. Leave us a comment, question. If you'd like to have us on, answer that on the show, we can do that. And I think in a few weeks, we're going to have another live show. So be looking forward to that. And to our Patreon subscribers, stay tuned for the follow-up. Happy travels.
Take care.
Bye-bye.